It's fascinating, ladies and gentlemen, that Tom Horn and Chris Putnam were quoted around the world. They were sought out from every major news source in the world. They were accused of having an insider in the Vatican. And what Tom is going to tell you tonight is going to make even the hair on the back of your head stand up, because again, what we're doing is we're seeing prophecy, real prophecy unfold. No one could have argued with Tom Horn, and even to the date that the former Pope stepped down before, when I call it this guy came on the scene, their last entry into the 4-year investigation authors will unveil, and I want to read this because this is cool, because Tom's greatest prediction yet that is going to shake the foundation of the world is incorporated in it. He's going to talk about the weapons of mass destruction that ISIS will use and how it will lead to an apocalypse. Petrus Romanus, Albert Pike, the Islamic State, and the coming Armageddon. Now, here's what's interesting. Does Pope Francis become the destroyer? He certainly has a good shot at it right now. Or will there be another? And what's interesting is the Last Crusade's agenda is hidden in plain sight. And ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the prophecy of the Cumæan Sibyl or the Muslim Mahdi. I'm sorry, they're not the same, on the Muslim Mahdi. So, Tom, let's run over a little background on how this all got started, because this has been a 4-year undertaking on your part. And let's talk about Petrus Romanus first.
Okay, Steve. Hey, great to be with you. It's such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me to come on to talk about all of this. Funny thing, Steve and Joe and Doug, is that we never did set out to write 4 books. This thing just took on its own kind of organic feeling, and issues kept coming to us, opportunities kept coming to us, the phone kept ringing, people knocking on the door. It's just amazing how really this whole thing has had an almost supernatural or preternatural kind of feel to it, beginning all the way back in 2011. I was speaking at, to our mutual friend Chuck Misler at his Strategic Perspectives Conference. I was one of the keynote speakers in 2011 at Strategic Perspectives, and I was standing in the back room, and Steve, you know Joe Artis. He was back there with me, and I'm waiting my turn to speak, right? But I happened to say to him, I said, something that really amazes me is that nobody has written a thorough investigative analysis of the prophecy of the Pope, and yet Pope Benedict XVI, who was the Pope in 2011, is the next to the last on the list. And I said, you would think that even if there are, people like us evangelicals who don't put any stock in much or any of Catholic prophecy, you would think, if for no other reason, the historical importance of a 900-year-old Catholic and a famous Catholic prophecy at that, called the prophecy of the Pope, that given that whenever Benedict is gone, the next guy is going to be the last one on the list. I'm just amazed that nobody's written a thorough investigation about this. So we're having that conversation, and the more we talked about it, the more Joe Artis said to me, he said, well, then you're a publishing house, right? So maybe you should be the one that writes it. So we're standing back there making notes, and this is where this whole preternatural thing began. I said, okay, I'm going to run up to my room before I have to speak, and I'm going to email myself these notes, and when I get back to my office, I'm going to really consider writing a book on the final Pope, who's called Petrus Romanus in the list of popes. And I went up to my room, literally opened my email, and I had an email from a guy by the name of Chris Putnam. Chris and I had only ever exchanged a couple of emails. We had never spoke to each other. I knew that he ran a blog site, Logos Apologia, but we had never done anything together. And I opened his email. In fact, we hadn't even emailed for probably a year or 2 years at that time. I opened his email, and he said, hey, Tom, I want to talk to you about the final Pope, Petrus Romanus, and kind of pick your brain on it. I couldn't believe it, right? The timing of that. So I emailed him back, and I said, hey, Chris, you can't believe the timing of your email, brother. And one thing led to the other. I'm not going to give this to you blow by blow. But that's how it started. It had this whole kind of supernatural timing around it. we decided that we were going to write a thorough examination of the book, which wound up being called Petrus Romanus, The Final Pope is Here. If people are not familiar with what that is about, it's a 900-year-old prophecy. It's ascribed to a Irish bishop by the name of Malachi Morgare, who in the 1100s wrote down a list. He had a vision, and he wrote down a list of 112 popes. Each of these popes would arrive in succession. He gave mottos. He gave ways to identify who the pope would be. And the final one would be Petrus Romanus. Well, Pope number 111, next to the last, was Pope Benedict XVI, Gloria Olivae, the glory of the olives. He was an Olivetan priest. So in 2011, we write this book. But in the book, in addition to everything else that we did, we speculated that Pope Benedict was going to retire, that he was not going to die in office like popes for almost 600 years have done. It's been kind of, the unspoken protocol. Popes don't resign. They just serve in office until they're dead. And we said this pope is not going to do that. Specifically in the book, Petrus Romanus, a year in advance of his resignation, we said we have reasons to believe that he is going to retire and make way for the final pope. Furthermore, we said we strongly believe that he is going to do this. Well, we were out there on television. Steve, you and I did radio on this, remember?
Absolutely.
And saying that this is what we believe is going to happen. We believe that it's important. There was a Jesuit, a Belgian priest by the name of René Thibault, and 64 years ago now, he too said that the Gloria Olivae is going to resign off, making the way for the final pope. So there was a lot of stuff, investigation. Some of this was metaphysical, some of it was gut feeling, some of it was revelation, and Pope Benedict doesn't step down publicly. And it's really weird because I was sending emails at that time to Chris Putnam, and I was saying, hey, man, it's not over till it's over. And then I would literally say to myself, what in the world are you talking about? It's not over till it's over. He's still the Pope. He hasn't stepped down. You missed it. You got the date wrong. The Vatican announces that Pope Benedict has resigned. And that very same day, they gave an interview with the New York Times. The El Observatorio Romano, the official newspaper of the Vatican, gave an interview with the New York Times in which they admitted that Pope Benedict had actually officially and secretly resigned when he had returned from a trip in March of 2012 and made his resignation official to the Curia, just to a few insider cardinals. Because remember, at that time, how they were having the WikiLeaks and all that, and blabbermouth cardinals out there spilling the beans about everything, so they were really tight-lipped about it. And they started remodeling a building that the nuns had been using for housing that was going to then become housing for the emeritus pope. And so we not only got it right, we got it right to the month and to the year. Well, my phone lit up, Putnam's phone lit up, everybody in the world wanted to talk to us, and as you said a moment ago, Steve, they figured we had an insider at the Vatican, and I laughingly said after the fact that if we would have told them our insider at the Vatican was the Holy Spirit, that really would have freaked them out, right?
Yeah, that would have melted down the pontiff.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, so everybody everywhere wants to talk to us. I was turning down everything, CNN, History Channel. I told everybody no. Chris went on the History Channel, was part of their Nostradamus thing, and talked about it.